Move out and take position. Enemy inbound.
Greetings and salutations to everybody out there on the World Wide Web. This is Emmett Watkins Jr., and you might also know me as EJ161 from the internet or whatever, my Twitter, my PSN, or anything else. And I'm here to talk to you about the Cloverfield paradox. I was actually working during the Super Bowl, so I didn't actually see the ad live, but just saw on Twitter that it got announced. I got home and I was like, oh man, can't wait to watch this movie. But first I have a quiz to study for the next morning. But that quiz is over. I've studied for it and I just saw this film. I have some thoughts on it, but before I give you my thoughts, let me give a brief history of me and the Cloverfield franchise. The first Cloverfield movie. I was pretty young at that age, so I wasn't really following too much of the mystery and advertisement. The only thing I literally knew about it was it had a trailer before some other big movie that came out earlier in the year or around that time, and no one knew anything about it. I saw just random clips on commercials and on the internet of just random things, and it seemed like it was very mysterious, very interesting. Eventually I saw the movie, and Cloverfield 1 became one of my favorite films of all time. I really liked how it was shot. I really liked the secrecy, not just in the advertisement campaign, but also in the film itself, how they were very reluctant to show you everything all at once. It made for a very suspenseful monster movie. And yes, Cloverfield is a monster movie. I can say that. It's a genre. It's one of my favorite films, so it's hard to top that if you think about it. But then we get 10 Cloverfield Lane that comes out many, many years later. I want to say that came out about 2 years from now. That film, I also really liked. I liked it a whole lot. I thought it was a very interesting twist, a very interesting different way to tackle that universe. It was on such a smaller scale than the other movie, so it didn't feel quite as epic. It was definitely just as, if not more so, interesting. But it was just a completely different film. So I can't say that 10 Cloverfield Lane is up there on the level in my head as the original film. But that's not anything due to the film itself. That's just me and my genre leanings, I suppose. So yes, I really love 10 Cloverfield Lane, though it didn't stick out quite in my mind such as strongly. But I love both of those movies, so I was expecting to love Cloverfield Paradox just as much. And for the large part, I will say it delivered for me. Now, I will say this is also going to be a different genre, with the original Cloverfield movie being a monster movie primarily, and the second 10 Cloverfield Lane movie, that being more of a claustrophobic suspense thriller type film. This film is more of a genre sci-fi type film. It has a lot more in common with things like Alien or Life, which came out a couple years ago with Jake Gyllenhaal in it. But except it has a little bit of a different way of how they do it. But I won't have anything spoiler heavy in for Paradox itself towards the front. I'm gonna try and keep it spoiler free for the first couple minutes so y'all can know if I like the movie. And yes, I do like this movie. I like it quite a bit. The acting is really good. The lead actress, her performance is really good. There's a scene with her towards the end that was really getting me emotional. And this film tackles a lot of interesting sci-fi tropes, and I don't want to spoil what those tropes are. Not quite yet, because you saw how the movie was released. It came out in a Super Bowl ad, and then it was released the very next few hours after the Super Bowl. So part of the fun of these Cloverfield movies is the mystery and not knowing what the hell you're going into until you watch it. So I don't want to ruin that for anybody. So I will say the movie's very good, and if you are a Cloverfield fan, as much as me at least or anything like that, the connection to Cloverfield is very, very apparent, but it does not make itself apparent until the very end of the film. And I'm talking like last 5 seconds of the movie is when they hit you in the face with, this is how it's connected. This is what's happening. So it's definitely like you have to be on board to sign up for a movie that could very well not be connected to Cloverfield at all. This whole movie could effectively not be connected to Cloverfield at all, and then they add in the final scene. Which isn't to say that's a bad thing, that's just a thing you have to know going into it. A lot of these films seem to have that. Cloverfield is just a regular monster movie until you realize it's part of a larger thing. 10 Cloverfield Lane is just a claustrophobic movie until at the end it reveals it's part of a larger thing. This is the same thing. It reveals it's part of something larger at the very end. So please be aware of that and don't expect it to have its connections slapping you in the face throughout the film. So I will say, really loved the movie. Really, it was just really cool. Cool is the word I have. Slick is the word I have. A lot of set designs were neat. Like I said, a lot of casting characters were cool. Some of the twists you could maybe see coming, but I was still entertained throughout. I thought the film was great. Not the greatest, probably not my favorite in the franchise either, but I definitely liked it a lot. I saw a lot of people hating on it on Twitter. Maybe not hating on it, but expressing their disappointment. I did not understand that sentiment at all. I thought this movie was awesome. Sure, it had some weak points, I can now admit now that I've seen the film, but it's definitely something worth your time if you're a sci-fi fan and if you're a Cloverfield fan especially. So, point blank, like the movie. The Cloverfield connection is at the end, but it's very strong, and I really like the film. So that's your spoiler-free talk, and now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes here. Let's talk about what the hell was going on in that movie. So, spoilers right now, by the way. So, here we go. This movie was a fucking brain trip. So the movie's all about, different dimensions, alternate dimensions, and effectively what they're doing is trying to, make some kind of continuous energy source, and them trying to figure this out leads them into transporting themselves into an alternate dimension, which also leads to them getting tangled up in other dimensions just in tandem. So what it seems like, starting with the connection at the end, as you've seen the movie if you're watching this, hopefully. At the very end, you see the Cloverfield monster appear from the clouds on Earth. So the Cloverfield monster is actually decimating much of the town or much of the world while this is going on. So the whole movie is happening, and the monster's just basically tearing up havoc on Earth the whole time. And because of the alternate dimension things that they're teasing, they don't directly spell out the fact that, or I don't know if it's a fact, but the fact that the Cloverfield monster came from an alternate dimension, and that's how he popped up. But it seems like they're heavily hinting at it here. Judging from the ending of 10 Cloverfield Lane, where there were aliens there as well, though those were a completely different design and did not seem to be of the same species as the Cloverfield monster. Seems like those might have come from an alternate dimension as well. What I do not quite understand is how both of those different looking monsters came into the same planet. Now what I'm thinking might be the case is because there was already in this film Cloverfield Paradox, there is a scene in which two characters are in a bunker, similar to 10 Cloverfield Lane. Not saying it's the same bunker, but they were also in a bunker. So I'm kind of thinking that there might be a connection where maybe the Cloverfield monster is just the havoc that was wreaked on one version of Earth, and in another dimension there were completely different types of aliens wreaking havoc on Earth, henceforth the 10 Cloverfield Lane connection. So that might be a connection. They really send your mind reeling, because what they do with these alternate dimension things, they tackle a lot of ethical questions when it comes to alternate dimensions. They tackle, if you're in an alternate dimension and you've made different decisions in this timeline, so maybe the thing that killed your family, you didn't make that choice in this world, so maybe your kids are still alive and stuff like that. That's a very obvious plot point you've seen in the film. But yeah, things like that, it really ties into some interesting questions. So it really, like, the fact that they've now introduced multiverses into the theory behind this franchise means that we could just go on and on and on about, like, not only, this can answer so many questions in the first two films, and this film, of course, but also, like, they could conceivably just make a bunch of different genre movies off of the Cloverfield name. Especially when you start incorporating multiverse theories into this, you could just have any single universe that's just different and call it in the Cloverfield franchise. This is low key, like, this is the Tide ad of movie franchises, because effectively every movie could be a Cloverfield movie. It just takes place in a different dimension. It's a fucking mind-blowing thing to think about. So that's the coolest thing about this movie, I think, the fact that it just opens it up for so many theories. and that's really like why I'm like so jazzed on this movie right now. Having literally just seen it less than like 30 minutes ago, and I'm recording this commentary. I really like that fact. I think it's going to send people's minds just going crazy for years, and maybe that will lead to, you know, I hope this film does very well, because this is pretty unprecedented for a movie of pretty big cachet, I'd say, as well. Cloverfield's not the biggest franchise, of course, but the fact that it was a Super Bowl ad, and a lot of directors and stuff were talking about this on Twitter, hyping this up as being like a kind of a watershed moment for film and stuff. Because who announces a film and then releases it in like 2 hours? That shit's crazy. So I'm hoping this goes on to be successful, because I'd love to see more movies in this franchise and just see where they could take this singular idea and just how different they can make each film. There could be a romantic comedy in the Cloverfield universe, as I saw somebody on Twitter joke about last night. Yeah, they could just keep going with different genres. I'm really jazzed about that idea, and that is like the big takeaway I have from this movie. Now, if I take the movie disconnected from any Cloverfield connections, if I take the movie apart from that, it is not the greatest type of genre sci-fi film. As I've said, I don't know if I've said this earlier in the video or not, but it does share a lot in common with like Alien and Aliens, and even the recent movie Life that came out with Jake Gyllenhaal, where they're all in a space station. This movie kind of handles those tropes as well. Tropes that are found in those movies, this movie has as well. You'll find a lot of, like, you know, characters die. So characters die in like weird fashion. Now it is a little bit different, because I actually saw both Life and Alien Covenant in theaters. Alien Covenant being the only Alien movie I've seen, because I'm a piece of shit and I know those movies are supposed to be great, but I watched the worst one. Blame my friends for taking me to it. Love y'all. But yeah, it was what I didn't like about Life, and what I didn't like about Alien Covenant, is that everyone died in like kind of stupid ways, kind of lazy ways. Maybe in Life it was a little bit better, but even in Life there was a couple things that just fucking drove me up the wall. So I just didn't dig that. And what I liked about Cloverfield Paradox is that, you know, characters die and everything. Almost the whole cast dies, damn near. But they didn't seem to die in like stupid human error ways all the time. It seemed like the fact that the multiverse, or that the fact that other dimensions were leaking into their dimension throughout the film, kind of helped, like, those unpredictable elements that none of them ever prepared for and none of them ever knew. Those are the things that ended up killing them in the end, ultimately. It was very cool to see that. Like, even the Asian character, I believe her name is Tan, she died in a very unexpected manner. God, I want to say the Russian gentleman, he dies towards the, like, either beginning or middle, depending how you look at it. He dies in the film, and his death is pretty damn gruesome, actually. Things get transported into places, and shit, like worms end up in his stomach, and he vomits them all out, and that's how he dies. Like, the fact that when they get transported into the other dimension, they are taking the place of things that were already there in that dimension, so things get displaced, and there's some weird, like, not quite gore porn, but just like weird body shit. Like when they found that woman in the walls, like with wires going through her legs and shit, that was like fucking, that was a trip. I did not know what the hell they were doing with that. And it was strange, man. It's just, this movie's just so weird, like the way that they tackle all these things, and it just, the pace keeps up. The movie, like I said, it's under 2 hours long, but the pace feels like something's happening every couple minutes. Something crazy's happening every couple minutes that just fucking, like, you're just like, what? So I really liked the pace of the film. I really liked the characters. Oh my god, the main actress in this film, so great. I loved her so much. I want to say he might be Russian, or he might be he's German, I'm pretty sure. The German gentleman, I forget his name, but I think he was in Captain America Civil War. He was the kind of dude who had a vendetta against Cap America and Iron Man, and he's the guy who eventually pitted them to fight. His character was really great as well. A lot of mind games and deception going on throughout the film. I really enjoyed the interactions of all the cast. There were a couple things where it's like, I gotta sacrifice myself for the rest of the team, and even though I couldn't, there's really no time to think of an alternative to, you know, just taking a suicidal route, so I'm not gonna really ring on that too hard, but kind of, you know, I'd like to see some characters live. And I was relieved to see that it wasn't just the main character who was left alive. There was at least one other person. Not just because I saw their particle launcher required 2 keys to be turned at once, but also just because it's so lame to just have one. It not lame, but like I don't quite like it how everyone dies except one. That fucks me up a little bit. Have it be like a little bit more real. I feel like it's a little bit cliche if you just leave one person alive being the main character. It's a little bit cooler if it's like, it's a little bit imperfect in that right. So yeah, I really like, the more I think about this movie, the more I'm like digging it. The arm stuff was really cool. My theory on that is that arm is actually the arm from the same person from a different universe, and is trying to aid them in this current universe that they were in. But yeah, that ending where everything works, they get sent back to their dimension, and the Cloverfield monster is on Earth. That shit is wild. Did not expect that. I kind of figured there was Cloverfield monsters going on, but like, yeah, because they teased it when he gets to the Destroyed Hospital and everything. They teased that something was up, but it seemed like you could see in the mist that things were crawling. So it wasn't too much of a surprise, but it was a surprise in the fact that, oh shit, this movie is taking place simultaneously with the first Cloverfield movie, and hypothetically, possibly with 10 Cloverfield Lane, whether or not it's in the same dimension or not. That shit was crazy. So yeah, I'm thinking about this movie more and more, man. I just dig it. And the fact that she came back to her husband because he was ready to start a new family again, and she's probably happy that she didn't go back to the fake family in the other dimension that didn't belong to her technically. Just a fantastic film. Just cinematography's on point too. This movie was really clean, really crisp looking. Special effects were on point, in my opinion at least. There wasn't too much in the way of like crazy special effects, but just a lot of cool concepts, cool sci-fi concepts, man. I dug it a lot, dude. I'm just like, I'm mellowed, because like I started this commentary hype. Now I'm just mellowing out, just like, damn, man, that happened. I'm so glad that happened. So yeah, I think I'm just rambling at this point. Cloverfield Paradox is a fantastic film. Maybe fantastic is hyperbolic. I really enjoyed it. I personally really love this film. Got me hyped, got me excited. Can't wait to see where the story and universe goes after this. And shoot, man, I hope if y'all enjoy weird sci-fi shit or things that connect to other things in really tangential but really important ways, watch the film. And that's probably going to be enough for me. I've talked my ear off, or I've talked your ear off about Cloverfield Paradox. So I'm going to go ahead and recede into the recesses of my brain. So y'all have a swell rest of your day and rest of your year as well. I mean, shoot, this movie came out in February. We still got Black Panther coming up. Sweet Jesus, man. Anywho, talk to y'all on the flip side. This has been Emmett Watkins Jr., also known as EG161, signing off. Adios. Keep it real. Keep it true.